Hello and welcome to a very abridged version of Panorama on the network service of the NTA. I am Ogwa Vivian Unyedibia. We begin with the report that the Presidency has reacted to US, UK and EU coordinated statements on the suspension of the former Chief Justice of the Federation. Fatima Umar Buba has the details.
Presidency notes with interest the coordinated statements of the US, UK and EU linking the suspension of the CJN Onogen to the conduct of the upcoming elections. We appreciate the concerns voiced by the three statements and accept that the authors of the statements believed they were acting in friendship towards Nigeria with regard to making the statement. However, we also know that friends, when not properly informed or acting in haste, can indeed make serious mistakes, even with the best of intentions. Such is this case here. The statement by the three seems more driven by unfounded assumptions and, to be honest, a certain condescensions to this African democracy. This is unfortunate, but this gives us an opportunity to clarify some points in the hope that these three friends reach a deeper understanding of the situation. The statement by the US, UK and EU speak of their respect for constitutional practice and fair elections. However, the positions they take tend to contravene rather than strengthen these laudable objectives. CJN Onogen's situation is one of his own making and to a large degree his own choosing. The CJN has brought before the CCT because of a serious breach of law regarding his assets declaration. This is not a mere technicality like innocently placing a document in a wrong file or mistakenly placing yesterday's date on a document. All credible evidence indicates the CGN owned and operated several secret bank accounts. Unexplained large sums of money exceeding several $1 million have passed through this account. Several $1,000s are currently parked in their accounts. Multiple deposits of equal sum of money were deposited in some of those accounts during the same day. Such rapid and equal deposits are indicative of a person attempting to evade banking reporting laws and regulations. Thus far, CJN Onogen has given no plausible explanation for the funds or for failing to report the subject accounts in his assets declaration, despite having ample time and opportunity to explain the omission. Given the amount of money involved and the CJN's inability to explain the source of the funds, the most plausible explanation at this point is also to the most unfortunate explanation. No one did this to CJN Onogen. He and he alone is to blame for this turn of events. Despite these errors and omissions by the CJN, let us make this very clear. He has not been removed from office, nor has he been permanently replaced. Those who claim that he has been permanently removed do so out of imprecision of thought or mischief. CJN Onogen has been suspended pending the final determination of the substantive issue in his matter. The pending final determination of the causes against him, not one of your nation would allow a person enmeshed in legal uncertainty to preside over your legal system until the cloud has been cleared from him. That would incentivize corruption and assault the rule of law. Thus, the CJN should have and could have helped the process in this regard by recursing himself, adding from bench until this matter is settled. Instead, he indefinitely postponed a NJC meeting for no plausible reason except to avoid any consideration of this matter by
And that's all we can take on Panorama as we hand over to our outside broadcasts for a public hearing on the minimum wage at the National Assembly.
Of the people we represent, give it the seriousness it deserves, as we have always done, and add this to our accomplishment list of the 8th Assembly, 8th Assembly of House of Representatives. I hereby humbly welcome us all to solemnly devote our time and effort to proactively consider and timelessly deliberate and provide the best recommendation to the House with respect to this most important bill. Our watchword should be the Latin maxim, Salus Populis Suprema Lex. The welfare of the state is the highest law. On this note, I welcome you all to this public hearing specifically on a bill for the amendment of the Minimum Wage Act. You are welcome. Thank you all.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, while the Deputy Speaker was presenting his welcome address, the Honorable Minister of Finance walked in. Honorable Ajia Zainab Ahmed, you're welcome. I don't want to receive or answer questions after this public hearing. I'm also a civil servant. I forgot to recognize my own. The chairman of Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria, Comrade Bature Musa, is here. Your Excellency, I purposely skip the introduction aspect of the program so that we can save time, because I know the Speaker has more very, very important programs. On this note, Your Excellency, may I invite the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, to present his address and declare the public hearing open.
Thank you. Kindly take your seats. The chairman of this ad hoc committee on national minimum wage, our own dear Deputy Speaker, His Excellency, Right Honorable Suleiman Yusuf Lasson, distinguished members of the ad hoc committee, my very distinguished honorable colleagues, the Minister of Labor, Senator, once a senator, always a senator, distinguished Senator Ngige. I don't know which one he prefers, either a senator or honorable minister. The Honorable Minister of Finance, PAMSEC, Ministry of Labor, our brothers, Special Advisor to the President of the National Assembly Senate, distinguished Senator Enam, and the SSA to the President of the National Assembly House of Representatives, Honorable El Yakub, the clerk to the House of Representatives, not National Assembly. Let me not promote you unduly. And other senior members of National Assembly management, the organized labor, more than ably led by the all-powerful president. I call him all-powerful because this is the only president who can decide to shut down the country. Other presidents endure sleepless nights to make the country run. And other leaders of organized labor, as recognized by the Deputy Speaker, distinguished invited guests, gentlemen of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am greatly delighted to address you at the opening of this public hearing on the National Minimum Wage Bill by the ad hoc committee set up by the House of Representatives during our last plenary on Thursday, 24th January 2019. I want to welcome all stakeholders present here and to profusely thank you for honoring the invitation of the ad hoc committee, the fact that you made it here at short notice bear eloquent testimony to a recognition of the importance of this bill and the urgency that its consideration requires. There are obvious reasons why the House has to give accelerated consideration to this very crucial bill. It is a bill that is long overdue, as the current national minimum wage, which was fixed in 2011, has become unrealistic due to the supervening economic developments in the nation. As most of us here must be aware, the National Assembly need to go on a short recess for the purpose of the general elections, which is less than 3 weeks from now. We must therefore conclude this public hearing as quickly as possible today to enable the House to proceed with further legislative actions on it at its plenary tomorrow, as already resolved in our last sitting. More importantly, therefore, the consideration and passage of this bill is equally exigent because our country is at the brink of a national industrial crisis that we can least afford at this time. Passions are extremely high within the entire organized labor on this issue. Even before the consideration of the bill by Parliament, labor leaders have already rejected the 27,000 naira recommended to us by the executive arm as national minimum wage. At the slightest opportunity, the entire workforce in the country could be called out by labor leaders to resume the strike action that was recently put on hold without any further notice. The effect the surge scenario can have on the ongoing electioneering process is better imagined than experienced. There is no doubt, therefore, that the entire nation is awaiting and looking up to the National Assembly to do the needful with the promptitude it deserves. In view of the foregoing, the House is approaching this exercise with a very high sense of duty, responsibility, and loyalty to our nation. Let me assure the Nigerian workers that the National Assembly is aware of and shares in your pains, patience, and sacrifice as regards the issue of the national minimum wage. Majority of our members are on your side, as you can judge from their contributions to the debate on the bill on the floor of the House last Thursday. Armed with these sentiments, and taking into cognizance the decision of the tripartite committee that provided the initial ingredients for this bill, we should have no difficulty taking a decision that is in the best interest of our workers and the nation. While we're not oblivious of the current economic downturn and the dwindling revenue of government, we cannot also be blind to the fact that all economic indices indicate that even the 30,000 naira minimum wage that Labour is asking for is not enough to sustain a small family unit. However, the nation may not have enough to satisfy the minimum demands of the Nigerian worker, but as a nation, we must set the economic priorities right and ensure that we dignify our workers by making allowance for their minimum comfort. I know no alternative if we hope to up the productivity level of our workforce. It is said that the promise of democracy is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. According to Thomas Jefferson, these are God-given rights. Therefore, it is not enough to merely be alive and free. One must also be engaged in the pursuit of happiness in order to enjoy the promise of democracy. If that is the case, can we truly say that the Nigerian workers are enjoying the promise of democracy? Can we say that millions of our youth who roam the streets daily in search of non-existing jobs are enjoying the promise of democracy? Absolutely no. This is because although they are alive and free, they lack the means with which to pursue happiness. While the workers are underemployed, the latter are unemployed. So as a country, we are battling twin evils, namely underemployment, which is as grave a problem as unemployment. Dr. King Jr. aptly summed it up when he said, while talking about underemployment in America, and I quote, most of the poverty-stricken people of America are persons who are working every day, and they end up getting part-time wages for full-time work. Of course, America has moved on since Dr. King's time. We must also make Nigeria to move on in our own time. I've said before that poverty is the greatest threat to our democracy. Those who doubted me have seen that threat manifest itself in vote buying and in the use of money to compromise electoral and security officials during elections. On account of the sense of despondency and powerlessness that poverty breeds amongst the poor have and will always remain ever-ready tools in the hands of tyrants and demagogues, who in the course of history have always found it easy to mobilize for the purposes of subverting democratic institutions. Since underemployment and unemployment are bedmates of poverty, eliminating them must be the focal point of our government policies. The next evil, of course, is corruption. It is not in doubt that corruption fundamentally undermines democratic institutions and values. Corruption affects the poor most because they depend more on government for support. How then do we fight corruption from the roots rather than dealing with its symptoms, as is presently the case? The answer is for us to begin to pay workers living wage, not minimum wage. When we do not pay living wage, we cannot tame corruption. When workers take home is not enough to take them home. The temptation for them to cut corners in order to get home will always be there. Workers keep and process our national wealth, and the only way to insulate them from the temptation to want to help themselves to it is to ensure that they are well remunerated. It is not in contention that it is not a mean job to muzzle an ox when it treads out the grain. Leaving workers to their temptations is dangerous unless we can show that they are greater than Oscar Wilde, who, in his vintage wicked wit, loudly proclaimed, "I can resist everything except temptation." That we cannot pay living wage in a nation that represents a major economic promise for prosperity in the world speaks to the bane of our leadership. In order to reverse this tragic narrative, we must invest in proactive and innovative leadership, not the reactive leadership model that we have practiced all this while. Reality is I'm not a believer in minimum wage, although it is a constitutional issue and the practice in many nations. I wish the framers of our constitution had provided for a living wage instead. No wonder the United Nations Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights speaks to the right to a living wage in Article 7A, Sub-Article 2, as incorporated in the International Labour Organization document. Therefore, I cannot wait for that Nigeria to emerge wherein workers are paid wages that will not only take them home, but have a portion to spare in savings in order to pursue happiness and give their children the training that they could ever dream of. That should be our national goal going forward if we hope to ever make it to the club of elite nations. If we do not ever make it to the point where we can have a conversation about economic justice, it will not be because it is impossible to achieve, but because we lack the right leadership. We've talked about ending many things in Nigeria. Now is the time to talk about creating wealth and ending poverty. And those who bear the burden of the nation must be the beneficiaries, the first beneficiaries of such endeavor. In closing, I should also like to encourage that the views I've expressed here are genuinely intended to stimulate deliberations. Let me therefore implore all stakeholders to be candid and concise in their presentations so that this public hearing can be concluded in good time today to enable the ad hoc committee work on its report, which, as I said earlier, must be laid before the House in plenary tomorrow. While commending the ad hoc committee for being expeditious in putting together the hearing, I urge us all to pull through by working assiduously to complete this legislative exercise within the stipulated time. I wish us Godspeed in this assignment. At this juncture, it is my pleasure to declare this public hearing open. May God bless the Nigerian workers, God bless Nigeria, and God bless us all.
I think we can do better for the Speaker of the people.
You're watching live on the Nigerian Television Authority, a public hearing by the House of Representatives on the national minimum wage. The Speaker, Yakubu Dogara, just delivered his welcome address at this ad hoc committee's meeting, which is expected to collate comments from stakeholders and the public on the national minimum wage transmitted to the National Assembly by Mr. President on Thursday last week.
The National Assembly Service Commission Chapter Chairman, Comrade Labi Joshua. Your Excellency, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, Your Excellency, the Deputy Speaker, who is also the Chairman of this ad hoc committee, respected honorable members of this committee, honorable ministers, the Senior Special Advisor to the President, labor leaders here present, other invited stakeholders, members of the press. We are gradually moving towards the end of the opening ceremony of this public hearing. I don't know if the Speaker will want to spend some time with us or if he's leaving, but however, that is the DG budget. You can please take your seat, sir. Thank you. Welcome. However, we have to follow the procedure. May I, on this note, invite to deliver the vote of thanks before we allow the Speaker leaves, a woman who, because of her contribution on the floor of the House, if I have the opportunity, I want to be seeing her in House of Reps forever. Honorable Nena Elendu Okeje.
Your Excellency, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, my own brother, the Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, Your Excellency, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives and the Chair of this committee, my colleagues, honorable members of this ad hoc committee, the Honorable Minister of Labour, the Honorable Minister of Finance, the SSA to the President of the National Assembly, Senate, President of the NLC, the President of the TUC, and at this juncture, I shall ask that I respect the order of precedence as already laid and carry on with the vote of thanks with your kind permission. It gives me great pleasure and honor to be called upon to deliver the vote of thanks at this very auspicious occasion. I'd like to thank the Speaker of the House of Representatives for his very emotive speech in which he highlighted the commitment and the resolve of the 8th Assembly and the National Assembly of standing with the Nigerian people constantly and the Nigerian workers especially. I'd like to thank the Deputy Speaker for the commitment again to ensuring that a day like this has come. I recall that as they were writing the names of the people to serve on this committee, the Deputy Speaker enshrined all of us to ensure that we were here highlighting the fact that this is dependent on what we do. Highlighting the fact that the plight of the Nigerian workers is central to keeping our democracy warm, and highlighting the fact that we had to show commitment rather than echo at a time when the Nigerian workers needed us the most. I'd like to thank the members of the labor union, as you're called in Nigeria, the organized labor unions, for all the work that you have done. You have overcome considerable difficulties to be able to get to this stage. The continued flip-flops in the negotiations and further negotiations, and the use of all the tools available to workers, including downing your tools, have brought us to this stage. And we'd just like to say thank you very much for your continued resolve. On the part of the executive for making themselves available as if they had a choice, we'd like to say thank you. To my colleagues on the floor who looked and scrutinized the bill, and their vigilance noted that the bill stated categorically 27,000 naira, 3,000 naira shy of the negotiations with the executive, and has brought us to this place of absolute vigilance. I'd like to say to my dear colleagues, thank you very much. And to everybody who's here gathered, I'd like to say that the time has come, that Nigerians are starting to show the difference between the power of the people and the people in power. To all of us, I say thank you very much. A luta continua, Victoria.
Now you understand why I said she's one woman that I would love to be seen on the floor of the House of Reps forever. Another round of applause for Honorable. Let me inform you that we also have in this gathering the representative of the Accountant General of the Federation, Your Excellency, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Your Excellency, the Deputy Speaker, who is also the Chairman of this ad hoc committee, honorable members, your honorable ministers, the Senior Special Assistant to the President, labor leaders, great Nigerian workers, invited stakeholders, members of the pen profession, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the opening ceremony of this public hearing. Let me quickly recognize Adenike Adebayo Ajala, Deputy Director, NECA. We have come to the end of the opening ceremony of this public hearing. We are now into the technical session of the public hearing. On this note, may I thank this ad hoc committee for allowing me to anchor the opening ceremony of this public hearing. The Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Sulaiman Lasso Yusuf, who is also the Chairman of this ad hoc committee, is now in charge. Your Excellency, sir.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Honorable colleagues, according to our tradition, before I go to the agenda proper, I want those of you on the other side to know my colleagues on the committee, and the tradition of the legislator is self-introduction. So I'm going to start from from the far left, and they will introduce themselves and their constituency. But in this case, everybody on this committee is representing Nigeria. Thank you very much.
My right honorable Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, and dear colleagues, our invited guests, I remain Honorable E.J. Agboanyima, member representing the good people of Ego, Bubaka Federal Constituency, Edo State, the heartbeat of the nation. Thank you.
The Right Honorable Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, my dear colleagues, invited guests, my name is Nenna Elendu KJ, member representing Bende Federal Constituency and from Abuja State. Thank
you. The Right Honorable Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, my colleagues, our invited guests, my name is Yakub Abiodun Balogun, representing the very industrious people of Lagos Island to Federal Constituency. I am from Lagos State. Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, sir, Deputy Speaker, our invited guests, my name is Sadiq Ibrahim. I represent Fufore Song Federal Constituency. I'm from Adamawa State.
Honorable Speaker, Deputy Speaker, my honorable colleagues, my President, and dear comrades, I'm from Kano State, and my name is Comrade Aminu Suleiman. I represent Page Federal Constituency.
Right Honorable Speaker, Deputy Speaker, my colleagues, invited guests, my name is James Abiodun Faleke. I represent Ikeja Federal Constituency from Lagos State. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, my esteemed colleagues, invited guests, my name is Edward Pojok, SAN. I represent Jos South, Jos East constituency of Plateau State. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, esteemed visitors, my comrades in the struggle of Nigerian workers, I am Abubakar Chika Adamu. I represent Shiroro, Rafi, Muya Federal Constituency, and I'm from Niger State.
Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, my respected colleagues, our invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Honorable Adeyinka Ajayi, and I represent the people of Boripe, Ifeludu, and Odoot in local governments. I'm from the state of Osun.
Thank you very much. To complete the introduction on this side of the aisle is the clerk, acting clerk, House of Representatives, Mr. Patrick Giwa. On the list of invitees, we have about 27 listed. I will now call on the head of each of these invited guests to please introduce, if we have anybody representing the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. If there is none, we move on to the Governor's Forum. No. Okay. Why are you so far from this end? Listen, gentlemen, if you're actually representing the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, a chair should be located for you here. So come out here, come out. They will find a space for you. But we have to be sure that you are truly representing the SDF. And there must be an evidence for that. Because this is a serious matter.
To that effect.
Okay. The Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Chairman, the Honorable Members of the House, Honorable Ministers, my name is Ugochukwu Christian Okoli, Assistant Legal Advisor. I am here to represent the Secretary to the Legal Advisor, Office of the Secretary. Yes, I am here to represent the Secretary to the Government of the Federation.
Hello, we are going to come to that anyway. I move on to, if we don't have any governor here yet, because every governor is noticeable, no governor yet, then let me now go to the head of the civil service of the Federation, if there is any representative of the head of the civil service of Federation. If there is none, we go to the Honorable Minister of Labor and Productivity, our own distinguished Senator, Chris Dr. Ngige. Labor and Employment. No, it's introduction first, Senator. It's introduction.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Excellency Yakubu Dogara, the brutally intelligent Speaker. That's how you were described. Chairman of this ad hoc committee and the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, other members of this distinguished committee who are here with us on the high table, the Minister of Finance, the Permanent Secretary,
Ministry of Labor and Employment, my brothers, distinguished Senator Itayanan, who is the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Legislative Matters, Senate, and our brother Omar Yakub, Senior Special Assistant on the legislative side of the House of Reps, the President of NLC and his other officers, Director General, Budget Officer of the Federation, Chairman, Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission. Permit me to rest my protocol on the existing established protocol. Great Nigerian workers. Well, today, Mr. Speaker and Chairman, my name. Mr. Speaker and the Chairman of Session, I think I've participated in many public hearings. My name is Senator Dr. Chief Comrade Chris Ngige, Minister of Labor and Employment.
Minister of Finance.
Your Excellency, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Deputy Speaker, House of Representatives, and members, honorable members of the Ad Hoc Committee on the National Minimum Wage. My name is Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed, Minister of Finance, and I'm here today with representatives from the Ministry of Finance.
That's a bribe for 30,000.
Ministry of Budget and National Planning.
The Right Honorable Speaker, Deputy Speaker, House of Representatives, honorable members of the Ad Hoc Committee on the National Minimum Wage Bill 2019, honorable ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ben Akabweze. I represent the Honorable Minister for Budget and National Planning, Senator Udoma Udoma. Thank you.
Office of the Accountant General of the Federation. Nobody is representing the office. The Executive Chairman, National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission.
Your Excellency, the Speaker, Your Excellency, the Deputy Speaker, and members of the Ad Hoc Committee on National Minimum Wage, honorable ministers. My name is High Chief Richard Onwokebule, PhD, MFR, and also the Secretary, member of the National Minimum Wage Committee, that produced this report. Thank you.
I crave your indulgence. I omitted the Auditor General of the Federation. Is there any representative of the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation? The President, Nigerian Labour Congress.
Thank you. It's okay, thank you.
Your Excellency, Your Excellency,
Mr. Speaker, Yakubu Dogara, the chairman of this ad hoc committee, who also doubles as the deputy speaker, Yusuf Lasu, other members of this very important committee, representative of the government side, ably led by the Minister of Labor and Productivity, as well as Minister of Finance and all other functionaries, the other tripods, representative of NECA, and my other colleagues. I remain Comrade Ayuba Waba. I labor for the Nigerian workers.
President, Trade Union Congress.
The Honorable Speaker and the Deputy Speakers, members of the tripod, the stakeholders, the organized private sector, the government, and other colleagues in the labor movement. My name is Comrade Sunday Olusoji Salako. I'm the Deputy President of Trade Union Congress of Nigeria.
President, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Deputy Speakers, Honorable members of the ad hoc committee, all ministers present, our fellows in the tripartite, the organized labor. My name is Adenike Adebayo Ajala, Mrs. I represent the Director General, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA. We represent the employers of the private sector. Thank you.
Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Nigeria Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines, and Agriculture. Nigeria Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. Non-governmental organizations.
Your Excellency, the Speaker, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, who happens to be my own representative as a privilege. My name is Engineer Awal Ibrahim. I represent the National President of Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, and also we are members of the Tripartite Committee. So we are here representing our association. Thank you.
Non-governmental organizations, NGO, and finally members of the press. Are you being represented as a body, NUJ? So be that as it may, since we have run through the list of the invited stakeholders, we now want to set the rule. It looks like a town hall meeting, but in the legislature, rule is the most important thing. So the rule says each group is going to be given 5 minutes to do their presentation. And our advice that we go to the issues because we know this is an important thing. And a public hearing is going to only take the issues because whatever we say here are the things that are going to reflect in the bill. So we are about making the law, and so we must not be giving to frivolities. We are going to go to the issues. Each group is going to be given 5 minutes. And for the sake of the camera, because we are being heard live, whenever I call on any group, the leader of that group is going to come over here to do the presentation. And I'm going to strictly adhere to the rule of the 5 minutes. And let us try as much as possible. We have gone past the level of coming and going in terms of being verbose. This is a serious matter, and it is the last stage leading to the process of enacting the law that is going to guide us for the next 5 years as is stipulated in the bill itself. And after presentation, we will make sure we adopt each of the reports presented by the group invited. On this note, before I start calling on each group, let me, first of all, tender an unreserved apology to the President of the Nigerian Union of Road Transport Workers, who, when I arrived here, he personally came to greet me and exchange pleasantry. Please, the President, I know you are with NLC, but because of the nature of your job and the kind of position you occupy in the society, we want to specifically recognize your presence, and we wouldn't mind if you belatedly, which I have offered my apology, introduce yourself.
Thank you, the Honorable Speaker, the Chairman of the Ad Hoc Committee, distinguished Honorable Members, Honorable Ministers, the NSC President, members of the press. My name is Alhaji Najim Usman Yassin. I'm the National President of the National Union of Road Transport Workers of Nigeria and also the Deputy President of the Nigeria Labour Congress.
I'm just being informed that the office of the Honorable Minister for Federal Capital Territory is being represented here by the Permanent Secretary. Please, where is the Permanent Secretary? FCT, okay. Please, can you introduce yourself?
Your Excellency, the Honorable Speaker, Your Excellency, the Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Members of this Tripod Committee, Honorable Ministers, the NRC President, stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chinyaka Oha, PAMSEC, FCT. I am representing Madam Mohammed Musa Bello, the Honorable Minister of FCT. Thank you.
Once again, let me restate the rule. After conversing with the Speaker said he's advising me that there are some star presenters who would like them to at least have additional time. Part of the star presenter is Minister of Labor, Minister of Finance, Nigerian Labour Congress, NECA. All those four will be given 10 minutes each to do their presentations, but others will be given 5 minutes. Let me repeat, Minister of Labor, Minister of Finance, Nigerian Labour Congress, and NECA will take 10 minutes to do their presentations, but others will take 5 minutes. I will now start with the Honorable Minister of Labor and Employment.
You're watching live a public hearing of the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee on the National Minimum Wage, which is expectedly going to jack up the current 18,000 naira minimum wage to 27,000 naira as presented by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, is now going to make his presentation at the public hearing.
Your Excellencies, the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker, distinguished members of the committee, distinguished members of the audience. Mr. Speaker, I think I want to thank you for extending my time to 10 minutes. I was going to ask for that. But you graciously done that, the chairman. The issue of national minimum wage is a national matter. And the national minimum wage is acknowledged as a fundamental to the dignity of workers and realization of the decent work agenda of the ILO. Government recognizes minimum wage fixing as a process to give wage earners necessary social protection, because the definition of the minimum wage is the minimum amount of remuneration that an employer is required to pay any worker in his establishment at the lowest rung of the salary scale, lowest rung of the enumeration ladder. It is in realization of this that when in May 2016, the federal government deregulated pump price of petroleum products and moved PMS, core petrol, from 87 naira a liter to 145, organized labor kicked. Government decided to parley with labor and discuss with labor. And one of the major distillates of that discussion was the need for a national minimum wage committee that will fix a new national minimum wage for workers in Nigeria, taking into account the fact that the already existing Minimum Wage Act, promulgated in 2011 by the Jonathan administration, will expire same year. So in furtherance of this, we worked as a technical committee and presented a report to government. In consonance with that too, Mr. President constituted and inaugurated a tripartite committee on national minimum wage as part of government efforts to cushion the effect of this PMS increase. The constitution of the committee was done also to meet the international labor standards of ILO as per Convention 26, Convention 99, and Convention 131, which is the guiding principles and the guiding mechanisms for any wage recommendation as per minimum wage. The composition of this committee went far because of the requirements of the ILO that instituted also equal representation for both workers and employers, that's the social partners, with the government, which is the competent authority in ILO parlance. This committee became a tripartite plus committee when it was expanded to have a chairman who is not from any of the tripartites, expanded to have people from the chambers of Nigerian Chambers of Commerce, NASIMA, Manufacturers Association, MAN, and NASME, irrespective that the labor laws of Nigeria as presently constituted recognizes only NECA as the other leg of the tripartite in employers' consultation. This committee worked for approximately 1 year. It was chaired by a chairman appointed by Mr. President, no less a person than our own Ama Pepu, former head of service of the Federation, former minister. It has also a secretary, the chairman of Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission. and had representations from the Minister of Labor, Secretary to Government of the Federation, Head of Service, and 6 state governors, 1 to represent each geopolitical zone. Representations were also from Organized Labor Federation. As of today, we have 2 labor federations of Nigerian Labor Congress and the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria. In determining the scope of the assignment of that committee, it's pertinent I point out that the committee worked with the inaugural speech of Mr. President and adopted the following scope of work: to review the national minimum wage with a view to providing the lowest paid worker a wage that the economy can sustain, to consider all other matters that are ancillary to the national minimum wage with thoroughness, not only relating to the welfare of the workforce, but also the effect on the country's economy. And 3, to make recommendations for the review of the National Minimum Wage Act 2011, which is a child of the 1982 Act, with a view to recommending areas of amendments in the Act and coverage of the Act, sanctions for violation, mechanism and frequency for future reviews, and exemptions, if necessary. The committee did a lot of work. We had a work plan, held meetings, solicited from memoranda from the labor, state governments, private sector employers, and even from private individuals. We did get also some technical papers from experts and key institutional and professional bodies. We did visitation to the 36 states and held public hearing in the 6 geopolitical zones of the Federation. We commissioned independent surveys because I happen to have been the deputy chairman of that committee. Through its scope of assignment, the committee utilized social dialogue in carrying out its assignment and arrived at a report which was tendered to government, to the Mr. President. It's also pertinent to point out that we use the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The chairman have quoted profusely certain areas of that Constitution, especially Section 16, which provides for decent work, decent pay for people in Nigeria. 17, which says also equal work, equal pay without discrimination. And the item 34, the omnibus item 34 of 1999 Constitution, as relates to the exclusivity of prescription of the national minimum wage on the federal government of Nigeria, even though we operate in a federation. At the end of the deliberation, a figure of 30,000 naira was adopted by the committee through a motion moved and seconded by social partners, that's organized labor and organized private sector. Representatives of the government and some segments of the organized private sector dissented. The federal government offered 24,000, while the state governors offered 22,000, all based on the issue of ability to pay, the principle of ability to pay. So, as it were, there was no consensus. Section Chapter 5 of this report, which we have, and clearly elucidates what transpired at that last meeting. However, because a motion had been put and consensus was no longer required, the people who moved the motion carried the day. I want to say outrightly, one of the rules here, I don't know, you didn't say it, but we don't clap. I don't need any clap. And I don't need any booing. The outcry, hello, I want to clear some misconception, and that's exactly what I'm doing, as per the advice of the chairman, that today is for issues, and today is not for semantics or emotional talks. The outcry that the government had approved 2 national minimum wage figures of 27,000 and 30,000 is not true. What the government approved through all the organs, the Federal Executive Council, the National Economic Council, and the National Council of State, was for a figure of 27,000 for all workers in the Federation of Nigeria. However, the federal government, based on the principles of ability to pay, augmented their own 27,000 without putting workers through a protracted negotiation to 30,000, which means that the lowest paid worker in the federal public service, GL1 Step 1, will earn 30,000 minimum wage. We also want to go and say that nothing prevents any employer who is financially capable, either in the public or private sector of the economy, from paying higher than the statutorily prescribed national minimum wage. As a matter of fact, as we speak, the prevalent minimum wage now is 18,000. But some state governments, like the government of Lagos State, the government of Edo, the government of Rivers, the government of Delta, and the government of Akwa Ibom, some of them are already in the wrong of 25,000. Edo State pays 25,000. I'm categorically sure about that one. Therefore, what has been proposed as national minimum wage does not preclude anybody who has capacity to do better than even the federal government from doing so. And there are many state governments that have that capacity. They should be allowed to negotiate with their workers and get to the threshold of the minimum of 30,000 and go beyond it. Many can go beyond it. Lagos can go beyond it. So if you even start putting them in a straitjacket, you may end up, at the end of the day, making them not pay what they're supposed to pay. Therefore, I want this committee to note that what we have done cannot be interpreted as approval of 2 or dual national minimum wage. What we've done is in consonance with item 34, second schedule of the exclusive list of the Federation, of the Constitution 1999 as amended. However, I have to bring this again to the fore. Mr. Chairman, the output of the tripartite National Committee on Minimum Wage, a tripartite plus body, their recommendation is not cast in stone. It's not cast in stone. It's a recommendation. So for people to call it agreement is a misnomer. I say so with all emphasis at my command that is what the position is. Mr. Chairman, I also want you to note that the President of the Federation, knowing fully well the capacity and what the federal government can do, had instructed the Budget Minister and the Finance Minister to look at this particular issue in such a way that there will be sustainability of whatever amount is agreed on. Because whatever amount is agreed on will have consequential effect upstairs. You must move people upstairs. Because having moved the lowest person from 18,000 to 27,000, you have encroached on a bigger level. And once you encroach on bigger levels, you move them up, and they get more money. Mr. Chairman, but I don't think you are doing yourself good. My presentation helps everybody. It helps organize public sector. It helps organize private sector. Mr. President, I put in place a high-power technical committee, which is irrespective of what we are doing, to advise the federal government on ways and means how even the state governments and the private sector can pay this money with the consequential and not retrench workers or declare redundancy. And we think that this is important. Mr. Chairman, we have tried to use the ILO core conventions and the laws of the Federation of Federal Republic of Nigeria to produce a draft bill that has been transmitted to you. And this bill is the cornerstone of the federal government policy. Apart from figure, this bill talks about frequency so that no government will be pushed to say you go and you have neglected national minimum wage. No, it becomes something that is as a matter of non-demand, a matter of compulsion for the government to review a national minimum wage. What we have done there is to put the national minimum wage review to come into consonance with the area of the Constitution, which says that pensions will be reviewed at any time wages have been reviewed, or every 5 years, whichever comes first. We also touched the issue of exemptions, organizations that can be allowed to be exempted, small-scale industries, industries employing about 20 persons, 15 persons, trying to find their feet. If you don't give them encouragement or give them a kind of lifeline, they will die and they may not employ. Because the important thing is that as many people as possible, as much people as possible are captured in the employment net so that the issue of employment, the issue of underemployment will be tackled frontally. Mr. Chairman, I think I will submit my memorandum to you and the members of the committee, but it is important that I acknowledge you people, thank the House of Representatives, particularly you and the Speaker, for the speedy way, the speedy approach that you have used in tackling this issue, convening a public hearing, which is a public hearing, which is the first major step towards the enactment of a new bill. I thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
That was the presentation by the Honorable Minister, Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, to the Ad Hoc Committee on the National Minimum Wage. While delivering his speech, he made it clear that at the meeting to discuss the minimum wage, it was agreed based on the principle of ability to pay that federal workers be paid 30,000 naira, while the national minimum wage is to stand at 27,000 naira.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I, Senator Chris Ngige, OLN, the Minister of Labor and Employment, hereby adopt this report of the tripartite committee and also adopt the memoranda inside there with all the attachments as having come from me and the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment, and by extension, the Federal Government of the Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
Once again, Where do we get seat for these two?
The public hearing is being chaired by the Deputy Speaker, House of Representatives, Suleiman Lassen, and the Speaker is also present at this hearing. We also have other dignitaries that are here. We have the Minister of Finance, we have the Senior Special Assistant to the President, to the National Assembly, both for Senate and House of Representatives. We have the President of the NLC, Ayuba Waba. Also here is the Deputy President of the Trade Union Congress. They're also going to make their presentations to the ad hoc committee. Other stakeholders at the public hearing are the National Employers Consultative Association, which is also going to make a presentation before the ad hoc committee on the new national minimum wage.
Once again, thank you very much. While the Minister of Labour and Employment was making his way to his seat, two gentlemen just entered. And incidentally, they are the people who are going to carry the bulk of the body of what we are discussing here today. One of them is regarded as permanently a part of this system. And incidentally, is the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum. And now sees the opportunity to introduce His Excellency Abdulaziz Yari of Zamfara State and chairman of the Governors Forum. The other governor that I want to introduce is also part of this system, but at what you people on the other side we always refer to as the upper chamber, but I don't know where the upper is. A chamber is a chamber. It's a distinguished senator, His Excellency Governor Atiku Bagudu of Kebbi State. So it looks like the house is almost getting completed now. We are gradually getting there. Your Excellencies, before you came, the Minister of Labour and Employment has made his presentation. I will allow you time to settle down. While you are settling down, I will take the opportunity to call on the Minister of Finance to come and present our own report. Minister of Finance.
Assalamu alaikum. The Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Chairman and members of the Ad Hoc Committee on the National Minimum Wage, the Executive Governor of Zamfara State, and Governor of Governors Forum, the Executive Governor of Kebbi State, Honorable Minister of Labor, heads of ministries, departments, and agencies, presidents of the National Labour Congress, TUC, and other labor movements that are here today, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the press. Since my colleague has taken more than the 10 minutes, I will take less than the 10 minutes that has been allotted. But permit me, as I'm here, I want to speak to where we are in terms of the fiscal space. You recall that the 2018 budget that was passed by the National Assembly had a budget size, a total expenditure size of 9.12 trillion. The approved revenue for that budget was 7.17 trillion. At the close of 2018, the federal government was able to pay all of the staff emoluments 100%, all of the pensions 100%. The total cost of the salaries paid during the months of January to December 2018 was a total of 2.618 trillion naira. And this represents 72.66% of the actual revenue that was generated within the same period, January to December, which is in the sum of 3.603 trillion naira. The average monthly revenues over in 2018 was 300.25 billion naira per month. The average monthly salaries in 2018 was 2,118.1 billion naira per month. This means that on a monthly basis, after we pay salaries out of revenue, we have a total of 82.08 billion left, from which all other expenditures except for capital are supposed to be paid. And this includes overhead expenditure as well as statutory transfers. Excellency Speaker and honorable members that are here, as a nation, we do have a revenue problem. When you have a budget period where your budget is performing 51%, it is a very, very significant problem. What we're doing in the Ministry of Finance to improve on these revenue shortfalls is working very closely with all of the revenue-generating agencies to ensure efficiency and to enhance the revenue. We're doing this by continuously expanding the tax base, collection efficiencies through the use of automation, and also we will be coming to the National Assembly because we have identified some gaps in some of the laws that we need to bridge as well. So the Federal Inland Revenue Service are now working on automating most of their business processes, as well as the Nigerian Customs Service. We are also working together with these revenue-generating agencies to introduce new measures that will increase our national revenues. We have already introduced some stringent performance measurement tracking system for our government-owned enterprises to improve the independent revenue that is supposed to accrue from these enterprises. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the President very much wants to pay a very good minimum wage. But even as we do this, we have to make sure that the federal government, the states, businesses, and both small and medium-sized businesses have the ability to pay. So sustainability is important. In the 2018-19 budget that has been placed before the National Assembly, we had anticipated this national minimum wage increase, but what we provided in the budget is only at the level of 25,000 naira to the workers. So now we have to do more work together with the National Assembly to make an upward review of what is already before the National Assembly, because indeed what has been approved and conveyed to the National Assembly is 27,000 naira per month. I want to state also that it is not just government that is supposed to implement the national minimum wage. It is also the private sector businesses, small, medium enterprises, businesses that are having staff of 20 and above are also held to this. So we need to be careful to make sure that we don't end up losing jobs because of inability to pay. While this distinguished committee is doing its work, we are available in the Ministry of Finance to work with you to provide more information to aid your speedy process. I will be submitting later today to this committee my report because the invitation we got was very late on Friday. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Finance. Like I said, while I was inviting her to come and make her presentation, I specifically requested for the governors to take some rest. But who will take this time to want to listen to the chairman of Governors Forum, His Excellency Abdulaziz Yari of Zamfara State, to come and speak to us. We should be ready. Let me let me say this. And it is important for all of us to listen very well because I've invited him here. One of the few questions I will ask when we get to ask question time is that I want to know whether even Labour or those of us who are saying no have taken time to read the current bill under discussion. If you read, you will know that whatever we achieve here today and is eventually passed as an act of the National Assembly, it now behoves on the National Assembly in collaboration with you people without even necessarily sitting down with the executive arm of government to continuously amend. So why don't you allow us to do a proper thing? Our governors have respected us by coming here. Let's listen to them. Let's make a law that will be binding on all of us. And that is the process. So let's listen to the governor in silence so that we know where our problem is. Thank you, Your Excellency. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. Right Honorable Speaker, a friend and a colleague, the chairman of this city, Excellency, the Governor of Kebbi State, who is a member representing us in the Tripartite Committee, the Labour Minister and Minister of Finance, members of the organized labor, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, we just got the information yesterday that this public hearing is taking place. That's why we are delayed. We have wanted to come up with a submission, but the State Secretary is working on that submission. And the submission is simple, giving you how our committee, how our governors of the zone, that is, like, if I can remember, Governor of Kebbi State representing the Northwest, former Governor of Osun State, Governor representing the Southwest, Roches Okorocha representing the Southeast, and Governor of Edo, if I'm not mistaken, representing the South-South, Governor of Plateau State representing the North Central, and is it Bauchi or Gombe representing the Northeast. Mr. Chairman, when this matter come before us, we have made so many efforts to meet as governors and review our current problem. And this problem is simple. It's lingering since 2011, and members of organized labor are very clear and aware about the problem. The problem is when the law passed by the National Assembly in 2011, we set a committee as governors and present to National Assembly and the President. There's no problem. 18,000, we can go about it, but there is one fundamental issue that is delicate, reviewing the revenue sharing formula, what is due or overdue. Since the assumption of democratic system, it has never been done, and which is very clear and categorical by the Constitution that that should be made, reviewed each and every 5 years. The Speaker, as a member, I think I know I'm talking sense to the parliamentarians. So that has not been done. Obasanjo had attempted to do it, but they do a shabby something, and it's not concluded. So we talked to President Jonathan, and we wrote to the National Assembly that we are looking for how this is going to be adjusted, and we can go ahead. We are not against the union, and I think we are the first people to say that, so we can go for 50, but it depends on with the revenue. One thing between the state, the difference between the state and the federal. Federal, they have access of getting the funds through bonds, through every source of borrowing. But ours is limited. The loan collected by the state is what you call it, is a term loan, 4 years. No bank, if not because of some kind of adjustment that we have in collaboration with the federal government and the Central Bank of Nigeria, no state will be giving loan that exceeds more than your tenure of office, that is 4 years, 48 months. So we have issues there, which we said, okay, in the last presentation, federal government in the Council of State, they proposed that definitely we have to look inward to see how we can get more revenue. We agree with that one, which the committee is working on that. But at the same time, the federal government, they don't hear adjust the revenue sharing formula. They don't hear that, and they want to remain as it is. They say they have more problem than we do. Then we ask, if you have more problem than we do, how do you pay? So, Mr. Speaker, we are coming forward in the next couple of, maybe if I won't stay for here for 1 or 2 hours, our report should be ready by the Secretariat, so we present it to you. We accept what has been discussed in the Council of State, and we agree with that. We are concomitant, but ladies and gentlemen, I think the Council of State is the highest body when it comes to the issue of Nigeria. It's the highest. You can say PEC, Federal Executive Council, you can say National Economic Council, but when the issue concerns Nigeria and Nigerians, that's the Council of State. So now, maybe if one level to say I can say numbers over and above what is discussed there, then I've not been just to those elderly people that are there, and this has been taken there. I can't say that. But we governors accepted the numbers mentioned there, and we told the federal government what they are going to do for us to be able to attend there. We are ready. And whatever the federal government needed us to do, we'll collaborate and do it for the better Nigeria. Governors are not against the workers in any way. In any way. We are not. Therefore, our submission, Mr. Speaker, will be here with you soon so that it will help you to know where we are and what we can be done. And I also plead with the workers to understand the situation of Nigeria, not only because President Buhari is there. I have only 3-4 months to go, but I have to talk as the institution that I know very well. So I can't talk on the side of the district, okay, we can do it. And when we go to the field, it becomes an issue. So I want you, all of us, and I, to look at Nigeria as our own country. And also to look so I want all of us, I as a governor who is leaving, and maybe some of you may be behind us. So we shouldn't look at this as a level up, Labour and other party. No. There are so many, when I was here in the National Assembly as a member of House of Representatives, the way I look at things there, when I get there on the driver's seat, I understand that the story is not that. So I want all of you to understand the story, how is it. Thank you very much.
That was the presentation by the chairman of the Governors Forum, Abdul Aziz Yari, before the Ad hoc Committee on the National Minimum Wage. During his presentation, he made mention of the challenge of the state governors in meeting the obligation of payments of the national minimum wage, one of which he said was the need to review the sharing formula, which has remained unchanged for a very, very long time.
Your Excellency, Governor, we want your reports to reach us by 4 o'clock today. That is because we have to write a report that will be presented and laid in the House tomorrow, in the next 1 hour. Thank you very much. We now go ahead to invite the Minister of Budget and National Planning, who is ably represented by the Director in that ministry. And you'll be reminded that you are going to spend 5 minutes to do your presentation.
The Right Honourable Speaker, House of Representatives, the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Ad hoc Committee on the Minimum Wage, Honourable Members of this Ad hoc Committee, Honourable Ministers, Permanent Secretaries, other top government officials, representatives of organized labour, representatives of the organized private sector. My name is Ben Akabwe, the Director General Budget Office of the Federation, and I represent here today the Honourable Minister for Budget and National Planning, who is unavoidably absent, but who sends his very sincere regards to the committee and indeed to everyone else in attendance at this forum. The Honorable Minister for Labor and Employment has already made a presentation which articulated very clearly the path that government took in arriving at the bill that it has laid before the National Assembly. The Honorable Minister for Finance has also clearly articulated the fiscal situation of the government, and especially vis-à-vis its willingness and capacity to pay a better remuneration to workers. I fully align myself with those presentations. The only thing to add is, as is already public knowledge, concerned with ensuring that whatever adjustment to the minimum wage and the consequential adjustments to workers' remuneration that is subsequently agreed with labor is sustainable. And it's important to note this because the ability of the federal government to pay often tends to be taken for granted. And so far, thankfully, the federal government has been able to pay its workers, not owe them as some other states. But as you heard from the Honorable Minister for Finance, when any employer, government, business, whoever, begins to spend more than 70% of its revenue on, personnel costs, that is not sustainable. And that is why His Excellency the President, in forwarding this bill to the National Assembly, also took the step of constituting a technical advisory committee, which includes, members of the private sector and the academia, along with some other senior government officials, to sit down and come up with, a framework to ensure that not just for the current administration, but that in future, the new minimum wage and the consequential adjustments that are made can be paid in a more sustainable manner. And this committee's terms of reference includes, identifying new revenue sources or avenues for plugging any leakages that there may be. It also includes, making recommendations regarding any cut in cost of, governance. This committee has since commenced work. I, as the Director General of the Budget Office, have the privilege to be a member and secretary of that committee. The committee is taking this national assignment very seriously and has organized itself into 4 different work streams. And I'll mention them so that you get a sense for how detailed this work is, being, approached by the committee. We have this committee on compensation and organizational issues, a subcommittee on fiscal sustainability and alternative revenue sources. We have a 3rd subcommittee on macroeconomic stability and structural impact, and a 4th subcommittee on modeling and dynamic scenario analysis. We believe that ultimately the report of this committee will be a very useful input, both for the National Assembly in the process of legislating on this matter, as well as not just the federal but the state governments. The committee was given 1 month to finish its work, and it's working very hard to meet that target. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the Director General. Thank you very much, the Director General of the Office of Budget and National Planning. I know Labour, maybe you don't know him very well. He's been on that job in the last almost 20 years. He served in the same position in Lagos as a commissioner, and so he's vast in what he's saying. So let us take time to listen to people who have always been there. So thank you, Ben. I will go to invite the Executive Chairman of National Salaries, Income and Wages before we now come to Labour, and one or two before we go to the other direction. I know Labour, you want to hail your people and you want to present your position. But let's listen to those who are going to do the execution of the bill itself. So, Executive Chairman, National Minimum Wage.
We see the chairman.
Your Excellency, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Dogara, Your Excellency, the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of this very important committee, members of the committee, the Executive Governors here present, the Honorable Ministers, Permanent Secretaries, my colleagues on the Labour front, the people I have dealt with in the last 40 years. I must confess that having listened to the Honorable Minister of Labour and Employment, it would be improper for me to say any other thing now. For the simple reason that, first, I am involved. I'm involved because I was the member secretary of the National Minimum Wage Committee in the first instance. Secondly, I was present at the Federal Executive Council. I was present at the National Economic Council. I was present at the Council of State. I was even present when we met governors and tried to, lobby them to come up. I was everywhere. So now that he has presented the situation, I don't think I will have anything to add. But let me remind us that it's not about minimum wage alone, because the issue of consequential adjustment has come up. That provision in the Constitution that says pensions must be increased whenever there is increase in the salary of workers, or every 5 years, whichever comes earlier, also applies in this case. So when you are talking about how to fund the current wage bill, also bear in mind that the pensioners are also waiting. You must also address their case. I should know. So we should also take that into consideration. That's all I want to say. Thank you, and God bless you.
The Executive Chairman of Salaries, Wages and Income Commission, for, in our own language, for saving our parliamentary time. I will now therefore go ahead to invite the President, Nigerian Labour Congress.
Kuli. Thank you very much. The President, Your Excellency, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, Your Excellency, the Deputy Chairperson, other esteemed members of this very important committee, members of the government team, members of the employers' organization, my colleagues, President and General Secretaries of all industrial unions, my colleague, the President of TUC, ably represented, our representatives from all the states of the Federation. Let me immensely thank the House of Representatives for allowing this public hearing so that workers' voice can also be heard. I want to therefore put our appreciation on record because you are able to fulfill your promise to Nigerian workers. I remembered in 2017 during the May Day pandemonium on the same issue of minimum wage, I remember the National Assembly gave commitment that whenever a bill is submitted, that is going to receive accelerated consideration. And therefore, I most appreciate that this promise has been kept, because I know for sure that if not because of the exigency and importance of this issue, most of you will have been on the field canvassing for election. And I'm sure that all workers that will benefit, including their families, because on this issue of minimum wage, directly by our database, 11 million workers will benefit. And we know the law, what it provides about a family. A husband, a wife, and 4 children minimum. If you multiply that by 11, there is no economy that cannot be boosted. There is no poverty that cannot be addressed. This is why it is very central to every worker in Nigeria. Let me also say that the ILO recognizes that minimum wage is one of the most used instruments for affecting wage distribution on the labor market. In fact, minimum wage is provided by law in 90% of the countries of the world. And I want to give my source. Is a document paper of the ILO. It's called Implementation of Minimum Wage, Challenges and Creative Solutions. Working paper 12 of March 2011. And this figure have increased. Let me also try to educate us, because this is important. And let me say that I will be speaking on behalf of organized labor, both NLC and TUC. My 10 minutes will be announced to that of TUC also. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, there have been a lot of conception about what minimum wage stands for. Minimum wage is the barest minimum that is allowed to be paid by workers in both public and private in those 90% of countries around the world. When people say that in a federal system, we are not supposed to have a minimum wage, that is not true. United States of America is a federal system. It has a minimum wage of $10 per hour, and above that, every state can then be able to pay higher. Some states are paying $12, some states are paying $15. In fact, recently, Microsoft increased the minimum wage to $15 per hour. And therefore, the principle is that we must protect the most vulnerable workers from exploitation. It's not about a state. It's an issue that affects all citizens. So if we say remove it from exclusive list and give it to power of the state, who fixed for organized private sector? Employer does not and cannot determine single-handedly the salary of a worker. And so this is the principle. And if we understand the principle, it's easier for us to understand the challenge and work towards addressing the challenge. Particularly on this issue of minimum wage, I will start from the point of how 30,000 was arrived at. We are all aware that the minimum wage was due in 2016 because through the collective bargaining process of 2010, we mutually agreed among social partners that a 5-year cycle will be used to actually review the minimum wage. But to add salt to injury, which the Honorable Minister also quoted, some very important economic challenges also arose, where the fuel price was increased by about 85%, where tariff of electricity was also increased. But the salary have remained fixed. Inflation also grew up. And let me make the point.
in our database, empirically, minimum wage increase have not actually increased inflation. And I want to refer to this report which we have submitted to you. Check in the report. We have presented inflation rate in percentage from 2012 to 2017. In fact, when the minimum wage was increased, inflation dropped to 7.9%. And subsequent years, it also dropped. Let me also tell us what happened. In fact, the fact of the matter is that there are other scenarios that have actually brought our inflation very high. In fact, one of them, which we have looked at, is spending during the processes of election. This is one factor also that we must consider, because clearly there will be excess liquidity, and that will actually trigger inflation. But there is nowhere, by the data presented by National Bureau of Statistics, which is also in the reports that have already circulated, that minimum wage have triggered inflation. Then coming to how we arrive at the reports, which I said minimum wage was due, and we agreed in ensuring that palliative is extended to the workers arising from the economic challenge of increase in fuel price, inflation, falling value of our currency, because when we signed the 18,000 minimum wage, it was equivalent to $150. Today, 18,000 is less than $50. So the reality is that it's biting hard on workers, especially those at the lower echelon. Most of them cannot be able to feed their families. Most of them cannot be able even to go to work and become productive. This is the reality. And therefore, those are the factors that actually necessitated labor to demand that the minimum wage should be reviewed. And the minimum wage committee was actually constituted by Mr. President, and we went into negotiation. Let me also make the point that the issue of tripartite negotiation, the issue of collective bargaining, is an instrument that the ILO, not one convention, Convention 98 is a law that prescribes the issue of collective bargaining among social partners. Also, Convention 131 on the minimum wage say that partners, social partners, should come to the negotiating table on equal footing. It's a law. And lastly, is the fact that there are procedures in arriving at the minimum wage. The procedure Nigeria had adopted, because it's almost 38 years now that we have gotten the first minimum wage in 1981 through our collective struggle. It was not an offer. And therefore, at that time, we remembered we are in this type of situation where all the organs we mentioned also tried to look at the issue of 100 naira. And I remembered we came to this hollow chamber and we canvassed the issue to say that in collective bargaining by law and tripartism, which I've quoted the laws, collective bargaining agreement, whether plus or minus, is akin to a consent judgment. We are partners that sat on a collective negotiating table, having agreed what had been agreed will be transmitted to government as a sovereign to actually institutionalize it and make it into law. That is our understanding, which the law clearly spelled out. It's not just a mere collective bargaining. And that is why you can see that where we have industrial relation dispute is always resolved on a negotiating table with a collective bargaining agreement. And therefore, clearly, this document, which we signed and agreed on 30,000, I want to say, all the people we have invited here, clearly, if you look at the page, they were here. The Manufacturers Association were represented on the committee. NECA, the umbrella organization of employers, were represented. Organized labor were represented by 8 persons. Medium and small-scale enterprises were represented. They signed. In fact, chambers of commerce were represented. They signed. Because at the end of the day, we came to the negotiating table with different demands. Labor came with 60,500. Some state governors, because we also allow a customized letter to be written to every state governor. Let them indicate what they will be able to pay. It's also contained in this report. Some state quoted 37,000. They quoted different figures. Also organized private sector. All those I mentioned, they came with different figures. Through the process of give and take, through the issue of looking at ability to pay, through the process of looking at our economy, mutually, labor dropped. Because the issue is that we didn't even recommend 30,000.
But because we want to carry everybody along and make sure that we are considerate, Labour became very responsible and agreed on 30,000. And this document was signed and presented to Mr. President. We are also the chairperson of the committee, who is supposed to be a neutral arbiter, as was the case in 2010, where the Chief Justice was then the chairman, Justice Belgore. The same thing happened, and therefore the figure was presented. What we have expected, because I said it's a tripartite process, and what is agreed through a tripartite process, where we have gone to the table on equal footing, as enshrined by ILO Convention 131 on setting the minimum wage, is that you cannot alter the figure without consulting the other party. And therefore, what we are saying is that we have considered all issues, including, I remembered, the issue of how do we make sure that resources are made available so that this minimum wage can also be paid. Because we have traded this part for 38 years. And at every point of negotiating minimum wage, the same argument has come about. And let me also say that that is why Labour, now after submitting this report in October 2016, we have passed through many hurdles. One of the hurdles all of us could remember is even to submit the report. And after submission of the report, we gave 2 months, and we said, okay, after submitting the report, what next? Can we also have the bill? And in this report, the committee working as a tripod have proposed also a bill. There is a bill proposed by a committee. That committee has government, it has Labour, it has NECA. In fact, we are lucky because the person that represented Manufacturers Association was a lawyer, and they drafted a bill which is also in conformity with the practice and tradition. In 2011, the same thing happened. We also amended the bill and forwarded a copy. So clearly, this is how we have arrived at this level. And therefore, I think all of us must sympathize with the condition of Nigeria. 30,000 translates to 1,000 naira per day. 30,000 naira translates to 50 naira per meal for every member of the family. That is what it translates. It's 50 naira. Hello? If you have a family of 6, husband and wife and 4 children, it translates to 50 naira per meal. This is where it is. So I want to plead with our governors. We didn't stop there, sir. When we heard, when we also heard about the challenge in the states, we have asked our state chairpersons and workers to go also and engage their various state governors. I have the report here I'm going to give you. We have been able to discuss with 30 state governors, where some of them, the governors came themselves and made commitment that they will pay 30,000. We have recorded the 30 states here. The state that we couldn't see them there. Wait, the record is here. Because what the law recognizes is individual states. The law recognizes individual states. And that is why even in the public hearing, the 21 memo we received from the state is attached to this document. Whatever they have quoted is attached to it. Which is how we arrive at the mean, the media, and the average of how we then negotiated. Because even the mean, the media was between 30 and 37. But on the negotiating table, we saw the challenge of everything that was on the table. And we agreed when the motion was proposed to say that, yes, we are reasonable. We can go and explain to our people. And therefore, we are willing to accept the 30,000 so that there will be peace and so that everybody can be paid. That is how we arrived at the 30,000. It was not our position. It was not imposed. It was not something we just captured from the sky. No, it's also contained in this report. And I want to emphasize the issue of saying that the report is a mere recommendation. Please, in Industrial Relation Palace, which I have quoted the laws, there is the principle of tripartism, there is the issue of social dialogue, and there is the issue of the right of a worker to a collective bargaining process. Convention 98 and Convention 131, Convention 154, all these are laws that we have respected. And therefore, I want to plead that the 30,000, which we have canvassed for, which we have also reached a compromise position with social partners. And I want you to look at when people say medium and small-scale enterprises were not part of it, they signed the report. In fact, the chairperson of all the people they mentioned is in this report, which we'll give you. And the states that we couldn't meet them to get their commitment, the 6 states, they are also here. every state and what they said, including pictures. Some state, the governors will make them their workers. Because we say, no, instead of coming to Abuja and say you cannot pay, it's better you engage your workers there. Let us have the report from them. And they did that. On the 8th of January, in every government house in Nigeria, workers, pensioners, and their family went there. To now, let us hear what you have to say. And all of us have seen over the media. They came out to say, we are ready to pay the 30,000. So the ones that we couldn't be, they are here. They are 6. And I can be able to give you the document, the pictures, who say what, everything is here. And I think it's a public hearing where people can look at it and look at this issue critically. Then, in conclusion, we have looked at the bill. In conclusion, let me also try to make the point, because people thought that when you say the minimum, it's like enforcing all states to pay the same salary structure. No. If we say 30,000, states can then go and pay higher, just as it's painted now. In 2010, 2011, we agreed on 18,000. And those states say, no, I don't want my workers to be paid low. I'm going to pay 25,000. In the mix of recession, they jacked the minimum wage to 25,000. And many other states that we have quoted. So when we are talking about the minimum, which will apply to both public and private, we are saying that the 30 should be the minimum, because we thought that we are reasonable, having fallen from 66,500, which is empirical. In fact, what we did is not even to increase the 18,000. No. What we did by 66,500 is to bring back the real value of 18,000 when you put it side by side with the dollar. Why do I say so? Even our budget is tied to the dollar. We said the benchmark is X amount of money. And therefore, we know also that goods and services certainly will have the implication of also the dollar. And therefore, the purchasing power of workers have been drastically reduced and affected. So this has been the argument. And clearly on the bill, we have 4 amendments which we have proposed here. Amendment 1 is about the figure. In the current bill, item 1A provides for a minimum wage of 27,000. We want to say and plead that the figure should be made to be 30,000. And I want to say that this is not the first time. When we got the first minimum wage in 1981, this honorable house, from 100 naira, it was jacked to 125 naira, which was then equivalent to $200, and today we know that it's about $300. So it's not something spectacular. It's about the facts, and it's about the reality of the economic challenge that is facing the workers. So we want that to be put there, please. The next issue is actually section 2B, where we talk about the duration. In this report, which we mutually agreed, is not in contention. We agree on a 4-year cycle. It's there in the bill. The draft bill that is contained in this report, which has been circulated, is also 4-year cycle. And we said also, in addition now as an addendum, Labour want to also propose an amendment, because this is a public hearing, to say that yes, it should be 4-year cycle, or if there is a major economic issue of heavier that also will reduce or affect the value of the current minimum wage. So which other one comes first? We have already proposed it there. Yeah. And I say so, let me say so, it's in tandem with best global practice. In Ghana here, what they do is to look at inflation and say whichever one comes first, it will trigger the process of looking at the minimum wage. Because the minimum wage is to make families have a decent living. Workers work to earn a living. And therefore, if we want workers to earn a living, we must be realistic. We must be realistic to look at this issue. So we are proposing that amendment. The next one is the issue of the threshold. We also agree, which is not in contention in this report, that the threshold should be removed. Because we said every worker must be able to earn at least the minimum wage. To say that those employing 25 and above should be exempted, we thought it shouldn't be the case. In many jurisprudence, this law have applied. And I remembered also, before this honorable house, there is a bill by Peter Patterson also proposing to remove this particular issue. And therefore we are proposing, which we have agreed, which is also part of this bill, that it should also be removed. Lastly, when you look at also item 4B, that is the body that will be charged with the responsibility of making the next review, because we want to essentialize the process. I want to emphatically say also here, what is being proposed here is different from what is recommended by the tripartite, where we said that any future review will be done by a tripartite committee as we have done, because that is what happened also in 2011 and subsequently, that the tripartite body will come to the table on equal footing, which means equal number. And if there is any need to make any inclusion, it should be that the Honorable Minister can recommend to Mr. President after discussing with the social partners. Because this is about tripartism and this is about social dialogue. It's here. So that one body will not be more in number than the other body. And we think it's very, very fair. This was also agreed mutually at the committee. So I want to say that clearly these are some of the provisions we thought are important. And lastly, we want to also amend Section 5A, where it was recommended that a penalty should not exceed 5,000. We thought that this is a very serious matter, and therefore the penalty of 5,000 is too minimum. And therefore we want to propose and submit that Section 10, subsection BA, be amended to read a fine not exceeding 75,000 naira. We thought that with this, if it is done, then the principle of social justice, the principle of the Philadelphia Declaration of 1919, that look at labor not as a commodity, but as partner in progress. In fact, as the most important commodity in driving development. I'm sure that this will actually be able to actually just in a little bit assist workers. Not that it will be able to be a decent wage. It's far from a decent wage or even a living wage. In fact, we have considered all factors, including the economy. And that's why organized labor thought that we want to play with the House. We want to play with our governors. We want to play with everybody here, including Mr. President, that we are sure that he is mindful that 30,000 is a compromise position, that all of us will work together to build our country. Workers create wealth. And therefore, if we create the wealth, we must also partake of it. Let me lastly say, workers are not merely 5%. In fact, it is the 5% that serves the entire population. In the armed forces, in the healthcare, in the teaching profession, it's this same 5% that serves the entire population. And this is the scenario all over the world. How can we say our armed forces or police, how can we quantify their percentage in terms of even their contribution to national development? So if you see ourselves in this respect, it will assist us. And I say so also because even political office holders, their salary is uniform, from councillor to the highest office. The issue of ability to pay did not arise. And lastly, let me say, lastly, comrades, let me say that the workforce of any country is an asset to that country. What drives development everywhere around the world is human resource. It's not the technology. In fact, it's good and it's important that we look at other factors, but clearly, development is about human beings. And that's why if you look at the factors that are being used to measure development, you have the issue of maternal mortality, you have the issue of poverty rate, you have the issue of life expectancy, illiteracy rate, and many other issues. Recently, I was in a state, and I think I will end with this story. I was in that state, and we interacted with the governor. And he was lamenting to me that before he left 4 years back, the school enrollment in his state was 95%. That is pupil enrollment. But when he came back, he was invited by UBEC and said that it has been dropped to less than 50%. And he told me clearly, if salaries are not being paid, how can the children of the poor go to school? Because advently, it is salary that is being paid that keep the economy moving. In 2008, when the economy of the world was in shambles, I remembered what Obama said, which can be checked. He said he will increase the minimum wage. Because when he increased the minimum wage, there will be purchasing power. Economic activity will be stimulated. Electric motors can produce and workers can be able to pay. And clearly he increased the minimum wage. And that's actually saved the situation because issues improve. We can also say that a hungry person, if we want truly to look at the issue of the challenge in our system that is tied to corruption, certainly it's also important that a hungry person certainly will be a willing tool in the hands of few to manipulate and make sure that we have a corrupt system. And therefore, clearly, this will be of benefit to our country. It will be of benefit to our citizens. It will address a lot of social upheaval. Where salaries are not paid, we have seen that insecurity have increased. Where workers have been paid meager 6,500, including teachers, we have seen that the literacy level in that state is higher. And therefore, I want to thank you immensely. Lest I forget, let me once again recognize His Excellency, the Governor of Kebbi State, a member of the committee, and I'm sure he is with all of us and with the people, and I'm sure that he will plead with other colleagues to do the right thing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will adopt my report. I will adopt my report. Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of this very important committee, I want to, on behalf of organized labor in Nigeria, the toiling working men and women that create the wealth, that make sure that we sleep while they are working, that we can sleep with our eyes closed, the 11 million families that will benefit directly, and their families and children. I want to adopt this report. I want to also submit the report of the rally to various state government houses, and also this copy of the report of the tripartite committee, which I said have been signed by the social partners, and I think it will assist the committee in doing justice to this subject matter. And I plead lastly on behalf of Nigerian workers that certainly I think 3,000 cannot actually make us to continue to fight. 3,000 can address the issue. Thank you very much. Where do I put it?
Solidarity. God bless Ayuba Waba.
His Excellency want to present the report of the government. So let us give him the opportunity to present
Thank you very much, Chairman. On behalf of 36 governors of Nigeria, I present the report to this committee of the House of Representatives for the public hearing, which contain the position of Nigerian governors. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Honorable Speaker, Deputy Honorable Speaker, Your Excellencies, please permit me to stand on existing protocol and remind Labour that employers are also the engine of the economy, so we are equally as important. I'm here to represent the organized private sector, and I'm here on behalf of my president and members of the organized private sector. Nigeria Employers Consultative Association is the foremost umbrella business membership body in Nigeria. It may interest you to know, sir, that in 18 days' time, we are going to be 62 years old. We have been the voice of business on varied and diverse issues that aim at improving the environment of enterprises to survive and flourish. Our membership cuts across all sectors of the economy and comprises all sizes of businesses, from micro to very large conglomerates. I will not go and look through the background because it has been said of the national minimum wage by presenters before me, so I'll just go straight to my position, or our position. As the voice of business in Nigeria and part of the tripartite committee on the national minimum wage, we are in concurrence and fully support the 30,000 naira recommendation. You will listen to me now. Of the The recommendation of the National Tripartite Committee are submitted to the President. We canvass the position of one national minimum wage in Nigeria. The Tripartite Committee negotiation machinery was driven by three parties: organized labor, employers, and government. Each party had spoken with a common voice. Long before the negotiation commenced, each party met with its constituents and agreed on the mandate for negotiation. 2 or 3 figures as national minimum wage are an aberration and alien to the process of minimum wage fixing. The National Assembly should please retain the recommendation of the Tripartite Committee, which puts an exclusion on the threshold of employers with less than 25 employees. This will protect the SMEs and give succor to enable them grow and develop, as that was the only reservation that the OPS had to the 30,000 naira. Definition of terms such as national minimum wage etc. should be inserted in the Act. This should be total emolument consisting of basic salary, housing, transport, and other allowances paid to a worker at the end of the month. Lastly, sir, we urge the National Assembly, in the exercise of its powers and its rights and in its wisdom, to do the needful in the general interest of our nation and workers in general. In conclusion, we have presented this memorandum in the hope that it will assist the National Assembly to handle this issue of amending the national minimum wage. We thank you for your attention and trust that our lawmakers will consider our positions on the bill. I hereby adopt our report, which has been circulated to the Honourable House. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We now call on Nigeria Association of Small and Medium Enterprises 5 minutes to present their report.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, the representatives of the Governors Forum, the Honorable Ministers here present, the organized labor, the organized private sector, I stand on all existing protocol. The Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, NASME, I'm representing the National President, Sadebon Abuade, who is unavoidably absent, and he asked me to represent him in this laudable objective of nation building. NASME has been a member of the tripartite committee, and we are not against, we are in support of the 30,000 naira minimum. But however, we would like the exemption clause to be addressed, because let's talk of reality. Our Labour Congress, let us talk of reality. The Nigerian workers, the micro enterprises, the way the Nigerian micro enterprises operate, and we have seen by the statistics of the National Bureau of Statistics, there are about 36 million micro enterprises in the country, and these are mainly operating at the informal sector. So we would like this issue of the exemption clause to be looked upon, so that we are facing the reality. Let us not sign something that cannot be implemented and cannot be sustainable. Secondly, we are calling on the government, as they are looking at new revenue sources, blocking of leakages, reducing cost of governance. They should also address seriously various cake-making measures, such as the diversification of the economy, the issue of public procurement policy, that government have enacted local content policy, whereby a lot of our enterprises will be patronized. There is very weak policy on that implementation. So NASME would like to work on labor for government to implement this local content policy or executive orders that have been signed by the government, because if the local public procurement are being addressed to, this issue of generating and cake baking is going to be addressed. We are also looking at the issue of issues of skill development. Government should address the issue of skill development and implementation of quality infrastructure for our goods, products, and services. And also the trade policy. We would like the government to look at the trade policy that gives market access to our micro enterprises, because our trade policy has not been implemented to give market access to our own micro enterprises. So we are calling on government to look at these cake baking issues, because we are dwelling too much on cake sharing issues. If the cake baking issues, as we have mentioned above, will be addressed and implemented solely by government, we are going to realize the resources to pay minimum wage, even equivalent to United States of America or other things. So we support living wage income. But we want appropriate policies that is going to help in generating more than what the government has been taking in the issue of the Minister of Finance have talked about revenue generating issues. We would like them to address the issue of how government procurement is being done, how the policy of local procurement is being implemented, how issue of skills, issue of quality infrastructure, issue of trade policy to give market access to our micro, small, and medium enterprises for us to be able to generate the resources to pay salaries. By this amendment, the memos that we have circulated as NASME, I hereby adopt the memos circulated by NASME, which has been given to the committee as our own position in this public hearing issue. We thank the National Assembly for this opportunity, and we are looking forward to more Nigerian resources to build a labor force that is going to diversify the economy, generate more wealth, create more jobs, and this will surely address the issue of instability, insecurity, all the national building and the national integration issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will consider this point as probably the midway of what we have come here to do today. So I'm going to come over here now to my honorable colleagues who have listened in the last 1 hour or so to the presentation of the Governors Forum, the Minister of Labor and Employment, Minister of Finance, Ministry of Budget and National Planning, the Labor, NECA, to, because of the time involved, now make their own contribution. I'm going to time them too, and of course they are used to timing. Each member is going to be given 5 minutes to either contribute or ask a specific directed question, and you must mention who the question is meant for. So you divide your 5 minutes between your contribution and the time. So I'm going to start from the far right. Adeyinka Ajayi, Honorable. Yeah, let me treat the members of the committee first. Let me treat the member of the committee first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the time being, I've been reviewing the submissions of the NLC president, and I just want a little bit of clarity on the principles of tripartism. The concept of tripartism, as you've explained it, suggests that products of such agreements are binding. They are contracts. I would love you to speak to that issue.
I'm just being told that we are on live, and for your contribution and question to be captured, you have to mount the podium. So please do it quickly. Take into consideration that you have spent part of your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Honorable Adeyinka Ajayi, and I represent the people of Borikwe, Ifelodo, and Oduotin local government. I'm from the state of Osun. My question is to the NLC president. In your presentation, you dwelt a little bit on the concept of tripartism, which is suggestive of the fact that products of such negotiations or process under the ILO conventions are binding contracts and are not subject to reviews. Can you please educate us on that? Because it's a major plank of your submission as opposed to the position taken by the Minister of Labor and Employment. Thank you.
Honorable Chika.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, Mr. Chairman, people don't forget their history. And I will not forget mine here. 31 years ago, I was a clerical officer working with the government. And in every system globally, people even sponsor their own to parliament so as to protect their interests. Here I may be seen to protect the Labour interests. Yes, I have given myself to Labour as their own candidate in the parliament. Yes, Mr. Chairman, my observation, the committee existed, the tripartite committee existed for almost 1 year. Unfortunately, both from my people here in the side of Labour and the side of government, there is no table or structure indicating the various increase in the salary. In 1990, when the salary was increased to 250, I was then a clerical officer. The Labour then used us from their own side to produce the table of the various increments as regard to the salary increase from level 1 up to about level 17. That, in this negotiation, I have not seen any, and I believe we may be going into trouble if the government and the Labour did not produce anyone for negotiation which will reflect the various increases. Though I heard the President said that apart from those that will be raised to the 30,000 or 27,000, all others will be negotiable, which I believe we are inviting trouble within the Labour folks. To Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chairman, you see, the bill indicated 5 years for negotiation. But however, even in promotion, we have what we call national promotion, and with effect from so period. This thing is supposed, the last time it was done was 2011. So are we now backdating it to 2016? Which I believe that must be the way to go because other factors may crop up. Mr. Chairman, also, the definition of money, literally, not the academic definition. Definition of money is what money can buy. Mr. Speaker, who can promise me? The Minister of Finance is here. 2019, who can promise me that we are not going to have increase in fuel? Who can promise me that 2019 we are not going to have increase in the cost of energy? Who can promise me 2019 we are not likely to have inflation? Who can promise me that 2019 we are not going to have devaluation of Naira? Who can do that? I am a student of economics. I am not an economist. But all clear indication is tilting towards all these things I have mentioned. In fact, the facts are clear. In fact, VAT may be increased. And let everybody know, not only Nigeria, we are likely going to have global economic recession from June this year to June next year. And Nigeria did not have any mitigating factor. So this money we are calling 27 or 30,000 to me, and I will repeat anytime, is grossly inadequate. I imagine myself then at this side as a lower level officer. How do I manage my family at 30,000 naira? 2 children, 1 wife. What is the cost of housing? What is the cost of all other factors, housing, transport, and other things? Mr. Speaker, the need, I think the government will have to look at this issue. In this way, we have to make the civil service very productive in the sense that the civil service should not be just a place where we come, we answer, and we go without productivity. And it is the government that will drive that process. I was telling my colleague, we have shortfall of staff in almost every sector, education. You can use the civil servants that their job description and specification did not give them anything to do. They can go on posting to such places for 2 years, for 3 years, and then come back to their offices at a particular point in time. This is the way to go. But if we continue to say we will be paying what is not wage, we are encouraging civil servants to be thieves, we are encouraging civil servants to be beggars. Thank you. This is my submission. Okay, lastly, Honorable Minister, page 4
page 4 of 7 of your submission. I want to disagree that based on this, Mr. Honorable Minister of Labour, I think it is Mr. President that set the 27,000, because that is what it is indicated in the submission you made. You say after Mr. President, if you want me to read, I will read. Should I, Mr. Speaker? Okay, the minister can read. I don't mind the minister. Okay, Mr. Minister, page 4 of 7. It is indicated after the minister viewed the submission of the tripartite committee, the minister and the president fixed 27,000. This is what I see. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is the Nigerian Television Authority bringing to you live from the House of Representatives a public hearing by an ad hoc committee of the House of Representatives on the national minimum wage. You may recall that the President transmitted a communication last week to the lawmakers on a 27,000 naira new national minimum wage, to which the lawmakers responded by calling stakeholders for a public hearing to get their views on the minimum wage. So is it 27,000 naira or 30,000 naira? That is what the ad hoc committee is going to decide after the hearing and report back to the House tomorrow. And it is on this note that we come to the end of this public hearing. On behalf of all those that made it successful, I am Lami Ali, thanking you for your time and invite you to stay tuned as we resume regular programming.
I'm Sipasi Olaleko Ayodele. I'm based here in Ikorodu, Lagos State. I'm the founder of Protector Zone. We train children, youth, and farmers in sustainable agricultural practices to fight hunger and alleviate poverty even in the city. In 2016, joining Empower, I was able to reach more people. Empower gave me the feasibility and the exposure I needed to scale my organization from where it was to where it is now.
Minister of Labour and Employment Chris Ngige say federal workers to earn 30,000 naira, while the national minimum wage is 27,000 naira at House of Representatives public hearing on national minimum wage. Federal government collaborates with the UK and other development partners on economic development. Oil prices on move by political turmoil in Venezuela. The program is Business Express, coming to you from our Abuja studios. I am Musa Abubakar. Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, says federal workers are to earn 30,000 naira, while the national minimum wage is pegged at 27,000 naira. He was speaking at a public hearing by the House of Representatives on minimum wage at the National Assembly. Meanwhile, Ayuba Waba, president of Nigerian Labour Congress, disagrees, saying the minimum wage was reached through collective bargain by tripartite committee at 30,000 naira. Details will come your way subsequently. Sustainable government policies, access to finance and use of locally sourced raw materials in the manufacturing industrial sector have been identified as some of the measures of ensuring a robust economy in Nigeria. This was the submission of the President and Chief Executive Officer, Dangote Group of Companies, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, during a strategic leadership lecture for high-ranking officers of the Nigerian military at the National Defense College, Abuja.
With inconsistencies of government policies, you cannot plan. You know, because sometimes it's like a goalkeeper. When you're about to score the goal, you realize that they've taken the goalpost behind you, and then you have to turn around. By the time that you turn around, the time is gone. So what we did was to say, okay, fine, look, being traders, no matter what, whether you have money or you don't have money, when you wake up in the morning, you need the basic things. So I think we should not invent the wheel. Let us now just go ahead and just do something like, what do? Let us now be producing goods that we've been trading in. So it will be easier for us. At least we've taken some few things off, like sales, marketing, the logistic movement of those, and the customer base also.
The federal government says it is deploying strong coordination mechanism to cater to the need for accelerated revenue generation in the country. Only last week, the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, unveiled the government's strategic revenue growth initiative in Abuja. Lekatun Babatunde in this report tells us about the new policy.
Over the years, revenue generation has been a challenge that Nigeria has been grappling with, despite being the largest economy in Africa. All revenue to all GDP ratio is put at 39%, while non-oil revenue to non-oil GDP stands at 4.2%, necessitating the need to put in place the Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative, SRGI. Minister Zainab Ahmed at the launch said it was guided by the administration's Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP, pointing out that revenue enhancement has become critical for the mobilization of fiscal resources to deliver on socio-economic development targets.
There will be a VAT increase. During the course of 2019, we will have clarity as to which items and what the rate will be, and we will have to take a request to the National Assembly for amendment before it takes into effect.
Reiterate that the federal government is committed to improving the well-being and living standard of Nigerians through productive, sustainable, and inclusive growth.
I believe that with consultation with stakeholders, certainly the Nigerian public will be given advance notice at the time that these things might take place. And like the Honorable Minister said, some of them will have to go to the House and they'll have to be passed before they are actually put into action.
Presently, Nigeria's revenue to GDP ratio is at an unsatisfactory 7%, and this initiative is keen on exerting all efforts in turning this around through 3 thematic areas.
They need to review the automotive tax, and that we are saying the 35% is a baseline, which is the duty, but the 35% levy is what we think should be tinkered with.
The revenue initiatives have been broken into clear implementable portfolios for each relevant MDA, and a strong coordinating and governance unit will be deployed to monitor progress and results on revenue generation, to be chaired by the Minister of Finance.
Oluwasegun Kadiri of Q-Tax joins us now to take a critical look at this policy. He is a tax expert. You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, for starters, is there any sector of the economy that is lacking in growth or revenue prospects?
We can see over the years that the oil prices are very volatile, and obviously it's not able to sustain this. The infrastructural development in the country, and we can see that because of the volatility of the prices, it's unable to fund our budgets. So we have to look for other streams of income in order to sustain the revenue base of the country, and in order to enhance economic growth as well. And if you look at other sectors, quite all right, there are a lot of other sectors that are viable, but we need to bring them on board and include them into the drive for revenue.
Okay, what are those sectors that you think are viable?
You can look at the small and medium scale businesses, for example. Majority of them are outside the tax net, probably because of the cost of compliance. So we need to get them on board as well in order to pay, the right taxes at the right time in order to generate revenue. So there are a lot of other sectors like that we need to include, in this effort for revenue generation.
Which other sectors do you think are more viable or considered to be viable?
Apart from taxes, because majority of our budget has been funded from the oil, from the oil revenue. So we have to start looking at the non-oil revenue. You understand? Majority of there are a lot of businesses at maybe the fast-moving goods, businesses like there are a lot of businesses are going online as well. There are small businesses too that are coming up. All these guys are not in the tax net. For example, I can give you a practical example. A couple of friends called me some couple of weeks back. They actually work in a very big legal firm, and they got a letter from FRS telling them to come and file VAT. These are big firms that make a lot of money all around the year, but they were not aware they have to pay VAT. But just because they got a letter from FRS now, they have to comply. So those are different kind of avenues that you can use in generating taxes by bringing them on board.
So in other words, awareness seems to be an issue.
Very well.
Okay, so why has mobilization of physical resources been a perennial problem?
Yeah, having this revenue problem has been for a very long time, and it has been reoccurring from year to year. We have found out that it is very difficult to fund our budget over the years, and you will discover that a lot of government administration just come and they talk about, let's generate revenue, but the political will is not there. For example, we have a lot of laws that are very obsolete. What have we done to those laws in order to stand the test of time? You understand? Because globalization has made a lot of businesses very easy with respect to maybe internet offering of services from outside the country into Nigeria. So all these things has to be captured by our laws. So we have to have a very holistic approach with respect to generation of revenue, and not just, and the political will has to be there as well. This administration has done tremendously well, within the past couple of years with respect to generation of revenue. We have the VAT, we have the various initiatives and unprecedented measures that have been introduced by this administration, and I think we just have to keep up with the pace and we'll be there.
Okay, so let's look at the three thematic areas of areas one after the other. Sustaining revenue generation. How do you think this will work?
We should first talk about generating the revenue before we can start talking about sustaining it. Right now, there is not enough revenue to even fund the budget. For example, the 2019 budget, a large part of it is going to be recurrent. A large part of it is going to be servicing of debt. Then the other part, you have to borrow money for infrastructure development. For how long can you sustain that? So you have to first think of how to generate this revenue. Then you can now start thinking of how to sustain it. Taxes is one of the most sustainable way of generating revenue all over the world, and we have to start taking that seriously. And I believe we'll be able to generate quite enough revenue to sustain our budget over time.
Okay, so identifying new revenue streams is the second, and this is quite very interesting.
Yes.
Interested in that. Where's the place of data now in achieving this?
Big data is very big, as the name implies, and you can see Nigeria starting to understand the essence and the importance of big data. Big data is, for example, your BVN, for example. Millions of Nigerians are enrolled on the BVN. The BVN should be integrated with your tax ID. That's like your the national identity card management, your ID cards. You know, it should be integrated with registration of cars at the VIO office. It should be integrated with your tax ID. It should be integrated with your bank account. You know, when you are able to bring all this data together, you can collect the right taxes from the right set of people, and you can ascertain what they are actually meant to pay. You know, so the data is very important for us to mine this data in order to get the right taxes from the right individual and to have them come on board to pay what is right, you know, to the government.
Okay. Business Express, let's Business Express continue after this time out. Well, still talking about revenue, how to explore Nigeria's revenue sources, and we're still with Oluwaseun Gaduri. Well, still talking about revenue, the third thematic area is targeted at achieving cohesion between revenue-generating entities and equipping them with cutting-edge tools, expertise needed to support high performance. What is your understanding of this?
There needs to be an integration between revenue-generating agencies. For example, in most part of the world, taxes, that's like taxes and the custom and the tax collection agency is just one agency. But in Nigeria, for example, we have the customs and we have the FRS. They have quite a number of transactions, you know, that can affect generation of revenue if they are not working together. So what we need to do is we need to develop information technology tools that are very essential to make to have these people exchange information and data in order for them to be able to capture the right kind of transaction and the right kind of taxes. You know, so over the years there's been a lot of sharp practices from the fact that these agencies are not working in synergy. So we have to do something, you know, in order to bring them together, and we have to deploy information technology tools in order to create this synergy and to capture the necessary revenue and to get the necessary taxes from various importation of various goods and services as well.
Okay, talking about cohesion now, Nigeria still gets caught up in multiple taxation tangle. Do you think it's a problem of awareness?
It's very much a problem of awareness, because the way you mentioned multiple taxation, I smiled because I don't know of any multiple taxation in Nigeria. But the problem is Nigerians are not aware. They don't know who is to collect what and when is the person meant to come and collect. You know, the Taxes and Levies Act is very clear on who should collect what. You know, because of the kind of fiscal federalism in which we operate in, the local government, the state government, the federal government, they have various kind of taxes in which they are meant to collect. But because the people approach them and they are not aware of who to pay what to, you know, makes everybody talk about multiple taxation. So in my own opinion, I don't think there's multiple taxation. I just think there needs to be more awareness, you know, to businesses and individuals on who is to collect what, and you know, and at what time, you know, they should actually collect this kind of taxes.
Okay, increase in value-added tax seems inevitable, as pointed out by the Minister of Finance. But there is a concern from customs. Import levies on items like cars, whether away, resources to neighboring countries. What's your take on that?
Increase on VAT, you know, from what the Minister said recently, is going to be on certain kind of items, most likely luxury items, you know, and over the years we have been saying increasing the VAT itself on general items and services is not the right time, probably because we are not getting enough from the rate in which we have right now. So we should be looking at working on the VAT Act. The VAT Act is very obsolete, and there are a lot of transactions that, you know, that are being consummated without it being captured by the VAT Act. You know, and the VAT Act also needs to integrate automation and automated collection of taxes, you know, into the Act, so as for it to make these revenue agencies more stronger, you know, and for it to capture various businesses that were not existing in 1993, for example, when the Act was, you know, enabled. So we need to be, because tax is very dynamic, we need to be, you know, we need to be forward thinking, and we need to make the laws very much stronger in order to capture this kind of taxes. And for what the customs, the general customs general is talking about, is talking about taxes that are meant to come into the country if the levies and the taxes were not high. So a lot of smuggling is happening because the custom duties and the taxes that are meant to be paid are very high. So it's thinking about reducing this cost in order for them to generate revenue. They were increasing the revenue, increasing the rates, thinking that it was going to generate more revenue. But it's counterproductive because a lot of people are finding other avenues to smuggle goods into the country, while a lot of people are being discouraged from even importing, you know, some goods into the country because of the rates they are going to pay. So it's saying it has been counterproductive, and is advising the government to reduce that particular fee in order to encourage more people to come into the tax net.
Now, how is smuggling affecting tax collection and remittances in the country?
For example, if certain goods that come into the country should come through the borders, ordinarily, those taxes are going to be captured by, you know, by customs. They will get their levy, they'll get the custom duties, they'll get the VAT and all that. But if they are being smuggled, those revenue escape being collected. So there's no how smuggling is not going to affect collection of this revenue. But if you reduce the rates and encourage people to it will encourage people to come out and pay those levies, you know, on all these items. So we need to strike a balance, you know, in respect to policy, you know, to encourage people to come forward and bring their goods through legitimate borders.
Now, do you think Nigeria needs a stronger tax law?
Absolutely. We tax consultants and professionals have been clamoring for strengthening our tax laws over the years. We know it's quite a cumbersome and Herculean tax to get to do that because of the process, you know, in Nigeria. But it's something we have to do. You can't try to impose a burden on an individual without the laws, the tax laws in place, and you cannot be using tax laws that were in place 20 years ago to capture transactions of 2019. You know, so they have to stand with the test of time, and we have to strengthen our tax laws and our enforcement mechanism in order to collect the necessary taxes.
Okay, thank you very much, Oluwaseun Adiri. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
Now, the federal government has assured of its readiness to partner with any group or stakeholders towards the transformation and economic development of the country. Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed stated this at the UK-Nigeria Climate Finance Accelerator Workshop, CFA, in Lagos at the weekend. Ahmed, represented by Mr. Israel Igwe, Director, Economic Research and Policy, Ministry of Finance, said there was need for a coordinated green climate finance platform like the CFA in the economy. In his presentation, Mr. Chris Dodwell, Director at Climate Change and Clean Growth, Ricardo Energy, called on stakeholders in the financial sector to collaborate towards financing developmental projects. He added that CFA was a powerful example of creating a productive dialogue between financiers and policymakers focused on scalable opportunities. The Nigerian equities market closed positive for the second consecutive week as investor confidence increases. The NSE All-Share Index gained 1.36% on the week. Let's have the details with Mupulanda Kok.
Nigerian stock market sustained the level of rally it recorded at the beginning of the year as the week ended trading in green. The NSE All-Share Index appreciated by 1.36% to close the week at 31,426.63, while market capitalization rose to 11.719 trillion naira. 1.8 billion shares worth 17.2 billion naira in 18,332 deals were traded in the week by investors. The financial services industry, measured by volume, led the activity chart with 1.6 billion shares valued at 14.6 billion naira, traded in 11,778 deals. The conglomerates industry followed with 83.560 million shares worth 138.3 million naira in 951 deals. The third place was occupied by the consumer goods industry with a turnover of 36.251 million shares worth over 1 billion naira. Trading in the top three equities, Diamond Bank, Access Bank, and Guarantee Trust Bank, accounted for 871.5 million shares worth 8.4 billion naira in 3,305 deals. Also traded during the week were a total of 34,341 units of exchange-traded products, ETPs, valued at 440,166.37, executed in 7 deals, and a total of 3,498 units of federal government bonds, valued at 3.1 million naira. All other indices finished higher, with the exception of the NSE ASEM, NSE Consumer Goods, NSE Oil and Gas, NSE Lotus 2, and NSE Industrial Goods indices, which depreciated. In summary, 40 equities appreciated in price during the week. 25 equities depreciated in price, while 103 equities remained unchanged.
Now, trading ended on a bearish note on the Nigerian Stock Exchange on Monday, 28 January 2019. The all-share index lost 0.26% to close at 31,344.24 basis points. Market capitalization dropped to 11.7 trillion naira. Investors exchanged over 222 million shares valued at 1.8 billion naira. From Europe to US, upbeat investors are sending markets on a gaining spree. Amina Nujem has an outlook of the performances of major markets around the globe.
African equities closed the week higher on Friday with major bourses reflecting a positive sentiment. South Africa's JSE Top 40, Kenya's Nairobi SE20, Tunidex and Namibia overall ended the week bullish except Ghana's JSE Composite, which shed 0.28%. U.S. stocks rose on Friday as investors looked past a poor Intel earnings report, instead focusing on a partial government shutdown solution. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed higher by 0.75% to 24,737.20. The S&P 500 also rose nearly 1%. While the Nasdaq Composite moved higher as constituent Starbucks gained on strong earnings. Major stocks indices in Asia closed positive despite fresh overnight uncertainties surrounding the ongoing U.S.-China trade negotiations. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index gained 1.65% to 27,569.19. The Shanghai Composite gained around 0.39% to close at about 2,601.72. Japan's Nikkei gained 0.97% at 20,773.56. In Europe, the FTSE 100 was the only major bourse to close lower, with the DAX and CAC 40 closing more than 1%. That's Global Market Report.
On that note, we conclude this edition of Business Express. We value your feedback, so don't forget to reach us via email. The handle is NTA News Now. The hashtag is BizApps. Have a fruitful weekend ahead. Thank you.
is the network service of the NTA.
Section 7, subsection A of the Economic and Financial Crimes EFCC Act 2004 states that the Commission has powers to cause investigations to be conducted into the properties of any person if it appears that the Commission suspects that the person's lifestyle and the extent of his properties are not justified by his source of income. Do not say you didn't know. A very warm welcome as you join us on another edition of the program, The Eagle, coming to you from the stables of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. My name is Aisha Gambari, and it's nice joining you again after a long break. Kamilu Gaby is also on the program with updates in the country. Hello, Kamilu. How are you today? What's happening from the court corners?
Hello, Aisha. Thank you, I'm fine. And it's great to be back on the Eagle. A lot has happened from the courts over the past few weeks. Hello, viewers, and thank you for being part of the program today. As part of this segment, we will bring you reports on the arraignment of Doyin Okupe, a former senior special assistant to former President Goodluck Jonathan, on a 59-count charge bordering on money laundering and criminal diversion of funds.
Also today, acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Ibrahim Magu, has charged journalists to devote more time to investigative journalism as it forms a crucial aspect of the fight against corruption. Please stay tuned as the program continues right after this time up. Don't go away.
Corruption is a cankerworm, na cankerworm. I say na cankerworm, na cankerworm. Corruption don't finish our country. Nigeria women rise up and come together. Oh yeah. Every woman come out, but we fight corruption together. Oh, every woman fall out, but we kill corruption together. Oh, them they thief our money. Send them over to Igbo. Children they suffer every day. Better school in no day. Nigeria women come, oh, women from every sector. Make we fight corruption. We won't kill our country. Them go collect money for light, chop the money, light we no see. Good road and good health and call. We no see. I said na cankerworm, oh, na cankerworm, oh.
Join the EFCC in its crusade to rid Nigeria of corruption. Naija, now we all know.
Acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Ibrahim Magu, has charged journalists to devote more time to investigative journalism as it forms a crucial aspect of the fight against corruption. He gave the charge in Abuja at the opening ceremony of a 3-day training on investigative journalism for anti-corruption and accountability campaign in local languages organized by Wadata Communications Nigeria Limited with support from MacArthur Foundation. Zainab Sani Ahmed has more on this.
Magu, who was represented by Tony Orilade, EFCC's acting spokesperson, called on the participants to do away with armchair journalism and channel their energies to exposing corruption in the society. He said the media plays a hugely invaluable role in exposing corrupt practices in the society, and investigative journalism serves as the conscience of any nation.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and the media have always collaborated in the fight against corruption. We believe that the EFCC cannot do it all alone. We must have the support of the media in whatever we do. And I make bold to say that we've always enjoyed that support from the media. And the fight against corruption is moving on because of the level of support the Commission is getting from the media.
Speaking further, the anti-graft czar described an investigative journalist as one that stands out among other journalists who does not engage in armchair journalism or brown envelope journalism, but instead engages in deep, extensive, in-depth and serious research into issues of corruption.
Definitely there are challenges. And what are these challenges? we discovered that when you fight corruption, definitely corruption fights back. And again, the media, even though, like I said, has been an ally in the fight against corruption, a section of the media has also been a tool in the hands of the enemies of this country, the hands of the corrupt.
Describing the role of an investigative journalist to that of a whistleblower, he called on participants at the workshop to take up the challenge and devote more time to investigative journalism. He also emphasized the importance of keeping contact with relevant stakeholders that will make their report more credible and of high integrity. He used the opportunity to call on journalists to play an active role in the upcoming general elections. Magu, who also said every Nigerian has an important role to play in ensuring that the coming elections are not only free and fair, urged the participants to add to their responsibilities the task of ensuring that the elections are devoid of the now dangerous trend of vote buying. Amina Salihu, Senior Program Officer, MacArthur Foundation, commended the promoters of Wadata Communications Nigeria Limited for the initiative to come up with a training. As she said, at MacArthur Foundation, they welcome every idea to reduce corruption to its barest minimum. Zainab Sani Ahmed reporting for the Eagle.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has arraigned Doyin Okupe, a former senior special assistant to former President Goodluck Jonathan, on a 59-count charge bordering on money laundering and criminal diversion of funds. Amina Kawa has details.
Okupe was brought before Justice Ijeoma Ojukwu of the Federal High Court, Maitama, along with two companies, Valley Trust Investment Limited and Abraham's Telecoms Limited, allegedly involved in the commission of the fraud to the tune of 702 million naira. He pleaded not guilty to the charges. Upon his plea, the prosecution counsel, Ibrahim Audu, asked for a date for commencement of the trial. However, Okupe's counsel, Lulu Babalai, through a motion and notice dated December 17, 2018, prayed the court to admit the defendant to bail. Babalai further urged the court to admit the defendant to bail on self-recognizance, adding that he would not jump bail as he is well known. While responding to the application, Audu argued that the defendant was given administrative bail after he volunteered his statement and thereafter disappeared until December 2018 in Lagos when he was found. He further said that there was nothing substantial in the defendant's affidavit, adding that there is nothing to show the medical certificate is authentic and nothing to show it meets the requirements of the Evidence Act as it was electronically generated. He urged the court to exercise its discretion judicially and judiciously based on material supplied before the court, stressing that the court should take into consideration the gravity of punishment in the event of conviction on the charges brought against the defendant. After listening to all the arguments, Justice Ojukwu granted bail to the defendant in the sum of 100 million with one surety a like sum. The trial judge said, and I quote, "The surety must be resident within the jurisdiction of the court and must depose to an affidavit of mint, must have landed properties which must also be within the jurisdiction of the court, must submit to the court tax clearance papers from 2016 to 2018, also have recent passport photograph. The surety and defendant must deposit their international passport to the court. The documents are to be deposited with the Deputy Chief Registrar Litigation of the court." End of quote. Justice Ojukwu thereafter adjourned to February 27, 28 and March 6, 2019 for trial. Amina Kawa reporting for the Eagle.
In positions of trust. A public office is a public trust. Do not abuse positions of trust for private gains. Stay away from corruption. Nigeria is a great nation, and it is our responsibility to make the country greater. If you notice any act of corruption, please report to the EFCC via info@efccnigeria.org or call 09 904 4751 or 09 904 4752. You can also call 09 904 4753. This message is from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC.
Thank you for staying tuned. And still on court matters, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Gombe Zonal Office has arraigned Lucius Mayo, Elisi Yadua, Elisha Yahaya, and Rhoda Sampson before Justice Nathan Musa of an Adamawa State High Court on a 9-count charge bordering on conspiracy, obtaining money by false pretense, inflation of contract, forgery, and refusal to make full disclosure of assets to the EFCC. Zainab Sani Ahmed has this story.
Mayo is alleged to have, as Executive Secretary of the State Christian Pilgrims Welfare Board, connived with one Yadua, the Director of Finance and Account, Yahaya, an accountant, and Samson, the cashier, to divert to personal use about 132 million naira out of 347,884,000